Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pivoted Success Podcast, featuring my co-host Sean Cochran from TCC Canada and myself, Jared Goldsmith from ESAC's Virtual Events. At this time, we're very pleased to be welcoming Brian Henry from Quality Entertainment. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Morning, guys. Nice to be here. Thank you.
So, Brian, let's begin. Give us a little bit of a background. Who are you? What's Quality Entertainment all about?
Well, Quality Entertainment is in the entertainment business, as the name suggests, and we provide DJ services, live music, photo booths, sound and lighting rentals, game shows, audio-visual equipment, and other rental items. So that's kind of the nature of our business, in person and these days virtual. So,
right. I mean, there's no doubt that everyone, in the world's been affected, especially event planners or those in the event industry, weddings in particular. So let's talk about how you personally were affected by COVID, and then we'll talk about how Quality Entertainment was affected.
Well, it was back in March. I was in Myrtle Beach, as I usually am at that time of the year, golfing, enjoying life. And I was watching the news, and, this thing about a pandemic was starting to come up. And, I was watching it on the news for several weeks. And then all of a sudden, while I'm in Myrtle Beach enjoying my annual golf retreat with my family, the news came on saying, hey, things are shutting down in Canada. And so I had to get back to Canada as quickly as possible because everything was happening for me personally with my business. Everything was shutting down, cancellations, postponements, questions from clients, and my office had to deal with that. So that was quite strange. So I had to drive across the US to get back to Canada, to rush across the border to figure out what my life was going to be like in this new pandemic world. So that's what it was like personally. And then, of course, going forward, everything shut down. We were in lockdowns. Our clients canceled, postponed, wanted money back. So, the last year has been stressful. I have to say I have amazing clients, so they've made it as easy as possible on us, but definitely been challenges along the way. So,
Brian, what were your thoughts? Like when email after email, canceling, postponing, like, what did you think? The world was falling? Like, how did you deal with that?
It was difficult because we had never been in a pandemic before as a company and personally. So our clients were getting nervous, and they thought, of course, the lockdown was only supposed to be 2 weeks, and then it turned into a month, and then it turned into 2 months. So they thought that they could just push their weddings and their events a little further down the line, and everything would come back and there wouldn't be a problem. We'd get it under control. But we all quickly realized that that's not the case. It was going to be a longer than just a few months. So they were starting to panic and they wanted answers, and we couldn't provide them with the information. So, everybody was up in the air. Like, do we tell our clients, yeah, you can push your event from March or April to August and be safe? We didn't know. So it was really a different time for all of us, clients as well as suppliers. And so just a weird time for us. And as things progressed, everybody realized we're going to be here for a little while. So we ended up having to push them to 2021. And we're realizing now in 2021 that we need a little more time. So people who had events in May last year pushed them to May this year. And now we're in a lockdown currently. And now they've had to push them either to the fall or to 2022. So yeah, it's been an interesting time over the last year, but we've had really understanding people and staff, and it's made it a lot easier than it could have been.
So, Brian, you mentioned briefly earlier that you are now doing hybrid events or online events. Before the pandemic, was that something you would have even considered?
No. There wasn't as much of an appetite for our business. We were always known as the in-person specialist for entertainment. We provided photo booths, sound, lighting, big screens, LCD TVs. We provided technicians on site. We provided in-person game shows, magicians, hypnotists. We provided in-person services and entertainment. So going to virtual doesn't necessarily mean that, you can flick a switch. So it became a lot more difficult for us to just turn to a virtual world. And people didn't know us as being a virtual entertainment company. So it's, people say, hey, let's change your focus. Let's get out there. But if people don't know you to be that, then you got to spread the word. So we had to get the word out to our clients. We had to redevelop our website. We had to start doing events, posting what we were doing so that people can trust us. And we had to work with our entertainers who had no idea how to do an online event. We had to get them cameras. We had to get them microphones. We had to get them good backdrops. So it was a totally different world once we went virtual.
I mean, over the last 10 years, Brian, I've had the chance to work with you and some of your colleagues and your peers. Fantastic. I mean, you're known for quality entertainment. It's a perfect name.
Thank you.
I can only imagine, your clients, you having 1,000-person conference, a huge wedding, small wedding, doesn't matter. How do you go virtual from that?
Well,
not only sorry, you were going to say?
I was going to say, that's a great question, because our clients are often sometimes the executive assistant in the office. They're not planners. So we deal with a lot of local people that don't necessarily have event planners on staff. So they're asking us questions that we don't necessarily have the answers for early on in the pandemic, because we have to learn it. We have to learn the platforms. We have to learn great platforms like Remo. We have to learn how to work in other platforms and how to stream things out to the world and not have buffering issues or copyright issues. So we had to learn all that. And then we had to share that information with our clients. So they had all these questions. We had to learn it. We had to get back to them in a timely fashion. So I'm telling you, both sides were understanding, but we both had questions.
Yeah. And I mean, how would you train your staff? Because if you provide the cameras, microphones, so everybody has consistent across the board, so, to have perfect sound, audio, and all that, but there's always little glitches. What would a virtual event be without a tiny little glitch here and there? And
absolutely. We found that some of our entertainers are just not ready for the virtual world, and they've been sitting on the sidelines just because we can't teach them, or they're not interested, and we respect that. They just don't have either the opportunity to set something up at their house because they live in an apartment. It's just not going to come across that great. So we ended up having to work with entertainers who were ready for that type of step up to the virtual world. So there are a few entertainers that are absolutely amazing. They're killing it in terms of providing great service and great on-screen presentations, where other people, everything else isn't that great. But we would do meetings, video conferences, and tell them how to set things up. We'd tell them which microphones to buy. We'd take a look at their backgrounds, and we'd tell them, you got to clean that up. And anything from papers on the desk to wires hanging around. We got to get all that, because people are looking at a screen and they're seeing every single detail. They see that, your cat walks across the screen, right? You can't have that if you're an entertainer. They're looking for professionalism. They're looking for what they see on TV. But this is not TV. This is in people's homes, and they can't control the pets and the sounds and the doorbell. So we have to work all that to shut it all out to provide a great experience. So it's been a lot of fun, lots of laughs along the way.
Sure, Brian, let's talk about the wedding industry, because I know that you're heading up the Ottawa Gatineau Wedding Association?
Yeah, Ottawa Gatineau Wedding Industry Association. Yeah, I'm a board member, a founding member of it.
So let's talk about the wedding industry. How are some of the members of the association coping? Let's say you're a venue or a florist or anybody who is involved in the wedding industry. How are they adapting? I can only imagine the hassles that some of them have. Like, you have a huge complex that's empty. Like, our heart goes out to them. Some have been hit really hard. Venues, the most. The venues are the ones that are impacted the most. They have buildings, they have property taxes, they have utilities, they have supplies inside the building, they have things that they've purchased, whether it be cutlery or linen or mechanical equipment in the building, anything that they're all making payments on, and then your revenue goes to zero. And when people don't feel confident or comfortable hosting an event, whether that be a wedding or any other type of party inside the venue, well, there's no money coming in, but those bills still have to get paid. So, venues were hurt the most, and then it trickles down the line. It seems that the more successful you are in this business, the more you're impacted, because you might have a building to house your equipment. So any larger company that's been really successful were the ones that were, really challenged during this past year, including ourselves. I mean, we have a 4,000 square foot building that I'm sitting in right now in my office, and these bills had to get paid every single month with very little revenue coming in. So now, if you're a photographer or and you can work from home and you don't have a studio, well, then those bills aren't as much. You're not dealing with landlords, but each company is different. Decor was different. I know some decor friends that were really struggling because they had all this storage that they had to pay for,
and no money to pay the bills. So, and of course, all the storage places aren't landlords, so they don't qualify for the rent subsidy, but they have rent. So it's a weird thing, right? Oh, I get rent subsidy, not for storage places. You don't. Oh no. So, it's a very different problem for everyone. And the wedding industry took on a lot of debt. They're going to be paying it off for a very long time. But they are going to be here on the other side because they're all very dedicated individuals. So, and with the Ottawa Gatineau Wedding Industry Association, we formed that association to get the word out to so that we could tell the province and tell our health officials what we as a wedding industry can do to operate safely in this environment. And that's what our mandate was, and to provide education and social events for the members. So we were trying to keep their spirits boosted, educate them, and then advocate for them. And we did a really amazing job over the last year. Government listened, our members felt supported, and it's been a great venture from day one last year in August.
Now, the Ottawa Wedding Industry Association, that is a direct result because of COVID. Is that right? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So what happened was things were coming out last year in August. People were having home weddings, and we were still providing DJ services to home weddings, right? People would have it in their backyard or their parents', barn or something like that. And there wasn't any social distancing. There was no contact tracing. There was no restrictions. If 100-person capacity, it might be 110. And so, we as a wedding industry, we're saying, okay, whoa, that, our people, our makeup artists, our DJ companies, our videographers, they're not safe when they go to these home locations and they're not following the rules. So we as an association, we're telling the health officials and the government saying, look, you can't just allow private home weddings. I understand everybody loves private home weddings, but they're not taking the restrictions seriously enough. So we were advocating saying, look, keep it in the venues. The venues are responsible. They have contract tracing. They're going to have a floor plan. They're going to have people on staff that really care. They're going to make people wear their masks. So it was safer to follow the guidelines that we were suggesting than just let everybody have their weddings wherever and whenever they wanted. So that was one of the mandates, and we continued to promote that. We also were very big on telling the province of Ontario and Quebec, province of Ontario listened to us, was that stop making announcements on Friday afternoons. We have no time to adjust, right? You have a 100-person wedding on a Friday night, and then one o'clock on Friday, the restrictions are now down to 50 and they start today. We got to tell 50 people to, who may be coming in, staying at a hotel. Yeah, you can't come tonight. Well, thanks for your gift, put it in the mail, but you can't come to my wedding. So they were doing that on Friday. So they switched to Mondays. And then they were telling people, if they made announcements on a Friday, they'll take effect on a Monday. So, there's venues that had a lot of food for 100, and now they only had 50 people coming on a Saturday, still got paid for their food because the clients didn't want to pay for food for people that they didn't feed, but it was in the building. So that was what the association was doing, saying, look, you can't just make these, decisions on a Friday afternoon because you want to get out for the weekend, all your messaging. So we were really good at that. And that really helped our members. And that was probably the biggest notice. Some people were saying, well, why are you waiting till, announce it on a Friday and make it effective on Monday? It's because there was a lot of expenses that you put in the building. You bought linens, you bought, or you rented linens, you paid for food, you had all sorts of things, drinks, everything was in the building. But the numbers got reduced or canceled altogether. So the association was really good for that.
It's amazing to see you all sort of band together in these crazy times, because theoretically there'd be competition and all sorts of other things to worry about normally. But in a state of sort of emergency, so to speak, I mean, it's really nice to see people coming together, because there's so many industries that are affected differently, of course. And I understand that the government's trying to do what they can and do their best, but we need that voice to be able to get that input back to them so that they understand how it's impacting people. I've had the pleasure of talking to a few restaurateurs, and they were saying the exact same thing. They're like, well, we've got pre-bought food ready for meals that we've pre-booked for the weekend, and then all of a sudden they announce Friday at 3:00, no, you can't have the restaurant open anymore.
Yeah.
So what do we do with all this food? We just lose it. And I mean, there's just no recourse for so many people. There's so many of these expenses. So, I mean, as much as these lockdown open is frustrating, but at least give us a bit of a chance, right?
Correct. So you're hammering us as it is by locking us down and changing our numbers. And again, a lot of venues, they're set up for larger weddings. So anything under 50 people, they lose. You're thinking, oh, well, you can still have a wedding for 50 people and have people in your building. We don't want them. Why? Because they're too small, and I'm losing money when I host a wedding for 50 people because I still need all the same number of kitchen staff. I need, in fact, more people so that they're greeted at the front door and all the contract tracing. And I need more people to tell people what the restrictions are and to keep them apart. So I need more staff for 50 people. So it's costing me more money. So it's really difficult. So these poor venues were going through really difficult times. The wedding planners were challenged because, all of a sudden their wedding goes from 50 people down to 25, or it moves back up, or it changes location because this venue is no longer doing weddings during this COVID period. And that happened with 2 or 3 venues here in Ottawa. They just said, yeah, no weddings this year. Oh, now you got to find a venue. So everybody was scrambling, and the wedding industry did such an amazing job. Like they were really rock stars when it came to working together and, being positive. So yeah, I've got to hand it to them. They were fantastic. And the association really helped them because we were one voice. If one company was, sending emails to the government, they may not listen because it's one company. This is one opinion. But when you're an association, you're saying, look, these are what our members are telling us. And we represent a group of people here in the nation's capital that has a really strong message. And we took everybody's input and sent it directly to, of course, the province and the health officials here in Ottawa. And they were listening. So that was great. But one company doesn't make a dent. One unified voice definitely does. So it was really good for us. Yeah.
What are you most excited about, Brian? I mean, let's put your forward-thinking hat on. 6 months, a year from now, it's anybody's guess.
It is. Right now, I can't wait for things to ramp back up. We're starting to see a little bit of what's happening in the province with the vaccines and around the country. And we're starting to see some good news south of the border with what they're able to do with their vaccine schedule. They're opening up, and, Manitoba has just recently released their 3-step plan. So we're starting to see some hope that we are going to get back to being normal. It's going to take a little while, but I'm so excited for the day that I get my people back working. They're making money. People are partying. They're dancing. They're enjoying themselves. Or, families are together again. I can't wait for that day. I mean, I miss my staff. They are the most wonderful people, hardworking, and they're sitting on the sidelines. They want to, produce great parties, and they're just not doing it right now. And of course, they're suffering financially. So let's get them back to work. Let's get people celebrating. Let's get smiles on people's faces, and let's get back to work. So that's what I'm excited about. And I'm starting to see a little bit of it. We're not there yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, Brian, as a full-time musician myself, I can't imagine when I'm going to be able to go up on stage and start playing my saxophone, because it's a reed instrument. There's a little bit of spit coming out, not much, but just, how are we even going to be able to come up on a stage and play with our bandmates on a stage with people dancing 3 feet away from us?
I am hopeful that it'll be soon. It won't be soon enough, but I am doubtful that it will be in the next 2 or 3 months for that type of, there's 2 problems. First, the musicians that I work with, and Jared, you probably will say the same. It's the comfort level of getting up on stage to perform with other people while you're in an environment with other musicians, while they're also, breathing in your area, right? And you're going, okay, well, because you're not comfortable with it yet, right? And so it's going to take some time. We reach out to a lot of musicians who are being requested for events, and they're saying, no, not yet. I'm not ready to work again. They're nervous. So we need the musicians and the entertainers ready to work. We need the people comfortable going to these events, whether they be weddings or social events, holiday parties. So it's a confidence factor that's going to lead us back to where we were before the pandemic. So yeah, it's going to take some time. But
I want to leave some time for Sean to ask some questions, but I just love talking to you, Brian. So let's talk about the people who were the anti-vaxxers, in the industry, the musicians. If you have a musician who's saying, he used to work with Quality often, I'm not getting the shot for XYZ reason. How will that work?
And you're absolutely right. I mean, we don't at the present time have have any policies in place where we are only going to work with certain musicians that have been vaccinated and looking for their vaccination passport or anything like that. We're not there yet. I'm positive and I'm hopeful that everyone will do their part and get their vaccines, and so that we can all get back to work, because the only way that we're going to be able to see our families and work together and have weddings and celebrate is everybody being safe and vaccinated. That's the only way. I had my shot. I sent an email out to my entire staff saying, hey, I got it. My effects were fine, just a little mild sore arm. And other than that, I was fine. So I'm trying to, set an example, encourage people to do it, because it's the only way that we're going to be able to celebrate and grieve. There are people who are losing loved ones and they can't even get together to do that service because people aren't vaccinated, and therefore people are still getting sick. And that's a problem. So the only way we're going to get back to a normal life where we can celebrate and grieve is by, being healthy and staying healthy. And that comes with vaccination. So it's a long road. I hope people are going to watch the news and understand that life opens up if you get your vaccine, and they do it as soon as possible.
Yeah. One of my players who I've been working with for years, and he got COVID, his whole family got COVID, and he was in ICU.
Wow.
Hopefully we'll be coming out soon, but it was touch and go for a while. Very, very scary times, close to home.
Well, when a year ago, when it first started, if you were to ask someone, I don't know anybody who's got COVID. Months and months went by, no one knew someone. And then you knew someone who knew someone, right? Oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, somebody, and it became closer. And that's how it is now. I didn't, 6 months ago, I didn't know anybody who had COVID personally. And now I know several people who've had it very close to me. And people in my life who I frequent with have it or had it. And, it came close. I could have, seen them because we were allowed to see people at one point. So It came that close to getting to my doorstep. So, the only way that we're going to get out of this pandemic is when the vaccines are here. You just get in line, do your thing for our country, and get your vaccine. So, that's going to get us out of this. So, but
it's so nice to see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because, like you said, say a year ago, even when we were a couple of months into the pandemic, there just seemed like no solution at all. It was terrifying because there was no vaccine, no cure, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And you could see it, especially in some countries, just getting completely out of hand, which was terrifying. So seeing countries now like New Zealand and places that are pretty much back to normal is pretty amazing to see, and that we're headed in that direction is very exciting for everything, to be honest, but especially all the live interaction that all of us as humans need and have been missing so much.
Well,
do you see on the other side, sorry, Brian, I was just going to say, do you see on the other side, you've sort of gotten into some of the virtual stuff now, do you see that continuing as a hybrid type of scenario to connect even more people to some of these events?
So I'm with Algonquin College's event management program, and I'm on the advisory board. And about 15 of us got together about 2 weeks ago to talk about what is going to be the future of this industry. And we had some of the best minds in our city from various divisions of our industry, trade shows. We've had weddings, we had conferences, conventions, venues, and every person had a different view and a different timeline as to when they will return to normal. And some were 3 years down the road, conferences, conventions, which have large groups of people, 500,000 people. They see that coming back in 2023, 2024, because people need to make plans. They need to feel comfortable. They need to, their delegates, their guests, everyone to feel comfortable coming to the event. On the local level, it's still going to take a little time. People will feel comfortable hosting weddings, but the older people may not feel comfortable attending. The people will feel comfortable hosting them, but not everybody will feel like coming to them. So it's going to take a little time for the entire industry. It's not just going to be, okay, everybody's got their vaccine, turn the switch, and everybody just comes back. It's going to take a long time for things to trickle back. We'll go to restaurants. That's not a problem. We'll go to other events. That's not a problem. But large groups still makes a lot of people nervous. So, if someone were to say, hey, our holiday party is, December, 150 people are going to show up, people may hesitate because, again, if someone still has COVID, well, you can wipe out your entire staff, right? all your working staff can just get sick. What did I do? What did I do? So people are still nervous. I'm confident with the vaccines that we're all going to get, that we will be able to feel comfortable again very soon. I just don't know when that is. But every industry within the event and wedding industry will have their challenges as to when it comes back. So,
well, that's what I find to be such a challenge as we are getting towards what would be the end of this, is because safe is such a variable word, because yes, everybody's vaccinated, so it's deemed safe by the government, say, but everybody's personal sort of feelings about it all, and the impact of the last sort of year to 2 years of what this is going to be like, and how much residual is there. So like you said, there's going to be such a range of people who maybe some will be like, boom, I'm back, and that's great. But there'll be so many thinking, well, is it truly safe? What if there's something else? Maybe I'll just stay away from big groups and things like that. So it's a scary thought to see how long this could still last, even when we've sort of fixed the immediate problem, right?
Well, I talk to people, and every person has their own comfort level. I feel quite safe. I do all the things that I need to do, and I stay away from large gatherings, and I'm following all the guidelines I possibly can. But I'm an entertainer. I'm an in-person guy, so I feel more comfortable when things open up to be there for them, to MC events, to be on stage, to shake hands. I will feel comfortable doing that. But there's a lot of people who maybe have underlying health issues that say, you know what? Not ready yet. And you can't blame them. They have to do what's in their best interest to stay healthy and stay out of the hospital. So it's going to take a little while. I have family members that don't have perfect health. So they're not going anywhere near any event that has a large gathering, or restaurants for that matter, until they feel comfortable with the people that they're sitting with. So it'll take a little while, but we're going to get there. That's the nice thing.
I think what this is teaching most people in organizations, departments, municipalities is the agility. Like when I think of the events management program at Algonquin College, right? I'm also on this advisory committee talking about virtual events.
That's right.
Even large academic institutions are changing their direction. It's much easier for a small business, a one-person shop, 10 people. Okay, here's the new direction. Let's abide by it. But when you have an organization of thousands of people or a city, much more cumbersome to do it. But I think we are seeing that they have no choice, because this is what the culture is telling us now. We have to.
And you're right. And, that meeting that you and I were both in that day, you heard different groups saying, yes, virtual is here to stay, but how much will it still be in our lives? And we had an audiovisual company, a major one, on the call as well. And he was saying that virtual is here to stay, but the prices are so high to do it, because, again, it's like producing a mini TV show, and people don't realize that there's so much content that has to go into doing it. Sure, you have your hosts, then you have scripts, and then you have graphics on the screen, and then you have roll video, and then you have all sorts of stuff that goes into a small little production that people don't see, the before work and the after work. So, and again, when you do it on site, you just show up and you do the event and you leave. But with virtual events, they add another component, and that you have to be concerned about, and add more cost. So for my clients, we're not going to have as many virtual events. I think it's going to calm down a little bit. They'll want to be in person. They'll want to do their fundraisers in person and not virtually, because they make more money that way. But, it's going to be different depending on if you're a large association or a small little company. So it'll be good.
I wonder going forward, now that people are understanding what goes on behind the scenes for the AV, when your Quality Entertainment does a huge conference, huge these days might be 100 people, eventually 1,000.
Yeah.
When they see how seamless everything is through you guys, they realize that there's people in the back who do it, and not everybody can accommodate that.
No, so last night we presented the wedding awards. So Quality Entertainment presented the wedding awards, and it took us 4 weeks to prepare what everyone watched for an hour. The graphics across the screen, the script in the teleprompter, the camera work, the PowerPoint slides, everything. And it took a month of working almost every day to produce a 1 hour show. 1 hour show. The music, everything had to be edited, and the volumes had to be corrected so everything was even. So people don't see that. They go, it was an hour. Oh yeah, but it took us 4 weeks to prepare for it. So and when you're building a client, they go, I don't want to pay that. I'm going, okay, well, the product won't be great at the end. It will not be good. So people are realizing that they have to spend the money. And then they realize, would you have charged me this money in person? Nope, not as much. So they want to go back in person. Mm-hmm. And then some people say, well, why don't you do a hybrid? On site, you do your live event for the people in the room, and then we'll send it out virtually so people can stay home in their pajamas. But, well, that's great. But then ticket sales generate the revenue to pay for everything. And if people are at home, they expect it sometimes to be able to tune in for free, but how do you charge them? And then how, so there's always this components of how to pay for things if people don't show up. So it's very different. So there's going to be a learning curve as we go forward. Associations and companies trying to do a variety of different things, virtually, online, in person, to find out what works for them. Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But for now, I mean, we're doing both. So we still provide equipment for people doing in-person events, small little, we have a wedding ceremony coming up because they're allowed to have 10 people. So we're going to provide some sound for a wedding for 10 people. So we're still doing in-person and we're also doing virtual. So we've got the best of both right now, just not enough of either. So a little bit more would be nice. A little bit more. Bring it on. We're ready to go and our team is ready.
Well, that's it, right? And we're just waiting now for the vaccines to finally catch up with our enthusiasm and everybody's readiness. And it's such a shame. I mean, in a perfect world, of course, we don't control any of this, but we'd be all set, ready for summer. But I mean, I think realistically, that's not going to happen, unfortunately. But I mean, at least we can look to next summer as being hopefully our first close to normal summer, or at least, as close as we're going to get to one.
Yeah. And, there are so many nonprofit and charity organizations and fundraisers that have been sitting on the sidelines. Golf tournaments. Think about how many golf tournaments are in this city or in every city that raises money for charity, right? Through the silent auction tables and live auction tables and fees that they pay, and none of that money is being generated. Because the golf courses are too busy and you can't get 100 people, 144 people together, for example, to participate in a golf tournament. So therefore, those people aren't on site to buy the silent auction items, to do the live auction. And so all these charities aren't making money, and it's really hard for them to survive. And we need to get back to that. We need to raise money for them. We need to start doing things for the people in our community who are the most vulnerable. And, they've been without any fundraising for the last year and a half because some are just not big enough or have a database big enough to do virtual events. They rely on in-person events. We all got to get back and do our share to help these organizations.
Speaking of everybody doing their share, what can the community do to help?
Just be understanding, I think, right now. The government, all levels of government are doing the best they can. I mean, if you're a small business, everybody wants more. We want more grants. We want more loans. We want more. We want the wage subsidy to continue. We want all that, right? So that's obvious. But sometimes it's just listening to us. We have our up days and down days emotionally because, some days you have to pay bills and you don't have the money. And sometimes a little bit of money comes in and, and you feel a little bit better, but just understanding and support and just being there to listen to a small business owner or someone who works for a small business, just to understand what they're going through. We had to lay off so many people here. And I spoke to one of my employees who has now gotten another job just before I walked in and got on this call because we still miss these people, right? And they're still kind of struggling with their new life. So just be understanding, I think, is the most important. And just, understand that if the government goes into a little bit of debt right now, that it's necessary to keep really good quality, viable businesses from defaulting, going bankrupt, and not coming back. So please understand that we need your support. Once we get back on our feet, we will generate lots of revenue that goes into healthcare, education, but you can't let any business go bankrupt. You got to support them and whatever it takes. We as a strong country will get back on our feet, pay down the debt, but you can't let businesses suffer. So support your local business. That's really important to me.
And so we thank you for the chat about what the community can do. What about for those in the entertainment industry? Like some words of wisdom for your peers, Brian?
Yeah. Think outside the box. Add something to every event. and support live music, support entertainers, whatever it might be. These entertainers have been, full-time in their business and doing a great job at it. And then all of a sudden it's pulled out from underneath them. They would do lessons like piano lessons or saxophone lessons or anything like that, right? They do all those and they can't do them in person right now. So all that revenue, all those sales for them got pulled out. So, get back to doing those things, the singing lessons, everything. Go to your local pub when it opens up and it has live music and pay for it and tip the guy. Do those small things. If you're having a wedding, get live music for your ceremony. Get a DJ, get a band, do all that. Hire as much as you possibly can and afford, to get these people back up and running, paying down their debts and just being positive and happy, would really go a long way. So
I love hearing this because Ottawa is known as a government town. A lot of people in government, if not all, have kept their full pay during all this. But as a small business owner, we don't have insurance. We don't have benefits or healthcare or sick leave. I mean, many of us anyways. Mm-hmm. And spreading that around to keep the small businesses alive, that's a very good point.
It is. My wife is a federal employee, so so I know exactly what it's like. She's gone to work every single day, but she understands what it's like to have someone who's a small business owner because she has myself, and of course her daughter is a makeup artist. So she knows what it's like to have two small business owners, struggle with no sales, mental health when you're up and down. So she's watched it, but again. It's hard. Sometimes I do have to explain to her a little bit more of what it's like because when your paycheck is not affected, it's hard to understand, what we're actually going through. Like my paycheck has been cut, into a third of what it used to be. Now pay your bills, on a third of what you used to earn based on, and you still have your car payments, you still have your house insurance, you still have your car insurance, you still have gas, you still have all those expenses that you have to pay, your membership fees and a variety of different things, obligations that you have to make every year. And yet your paycheck has been cut by a third. Well, some days you're not, you don't feel so good. But the people like my wife, who are government workers and the teachers and anybody who's been able to keep their job, I've seen really great support. But, there can always be more because if there's two people who have not lost their job in the same household, it's hard to understand. You've been restricted. You've been told to stay home. And that's okay. And I understand that's a restriction. But when it affects your paycheck, that affects your mental health. When you and so we just need people to be understanding a little bit more and just for a little longer. That's all.
Boy, I wish my paycheck was cut by a third. I experienced 100% revenue drop.
No, down to a third.
Done.
No, my paycheck was cut down to a third.
Oh, I see. Oh.
Yeah, down to a third. 2/3 of it is gone. So yeah. So wow. So that's a different story. So and that's thankfully again I thank Canada. The wage subsidy has allowed us to continue with that amount. So the wage subsidy has been very helpful to our company, and we're grateful to Canada for continuing it. We need it to go a little longer. You ask what can people do? That is something. Support the wage subsidy because I have said that the wedding and events industry is going to be more like a hurricane. Long after it's blown through the countryside and it's no longer on the news, we in this industry are still going to be picking up the pieces and putting them back together. We're going to be showing wonderful things on the news and everybody having a great time. But the wedding industry that picked up the debts and the event industry that are still paying down the loans and the ones that are still waiting for business to come back, we're still going to be here, but we're not going to be on the news anymore. But that's the hurricane. It's blown through our countryside, through our industry, and now we have to wait for it to be all repaired. But you won't hear about it anymore. So,
unfortunately, that's a good analogy.
Mm-hmm, it is. Well, when they're still picking up the pieces from Katrina, and the tsunami, and yet it's not on the news. We won't even think about it. It's devastation that we don't want to talk about. We want happier news, but they're still picking up the pieces. They're still putting back some of the roads and some of the infrastructure. Well, the wedding and event industry is going to have the same problems. We're going to be off the news, but we're still going to be having our challenges.
The repercussions for years. Yeah,
for sure, for many years. Yeah. The debts don't get paid down overnight. So it was already a tough industry for the restaurants and the events. It's not a huge profitable business, but it's one that we love and we're passionate about. So we just but it's not overly profitable. We don't make oodles of money. We wish we did, but we don't. We do it because of the love of the industry. And so it's going to take us a little time to pay down those debts because the margins were small to begin with during the best of times. Now we're building it back up. So, and of course, all of our clients have disappeared and, maybe they won't host certain parties anymore. So we don't know. We don't know what the future is going to be like, but we're hopeful that it's going to get back here soon.
Sure. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, Brian, I just want to thank you for joining us. It's so nice to see different perspectives of this scenario because, there's so many different industries that have been impacted, of course, but very few as badly as yours. So, it's nice to see that people are still sort of treading water during this last phase and raring to go because it's hard as a business owner, period, to stay positive and enthusiastic when time and time again you start to feel that sort of start and then you get a new lockdown or something else happens or whatever. So we've had so many false starts as we think we're getting out of this that hopefully this is the real thing and we're really on our way, right?
Well, we're in the hardest hit industry, right? Tourism, social events. That's what the first thing that got closed down. Stop getting together. What's going to be the last thing that's going to open is the things that allow us to get together, opening up our museums, opening up for weddings, opening up for corporate events, conferences. So it was the first to close, the last to open. So there's a long period of time in between that. And think about it. Tell, any business owner, hey, guess what? You're not going to have any revenue for about a year and a half or 2 years and see how business goes from there. Right. So it's been a challenging time for our industry, but it's resilient, strong. We are ready to go and we'll get her back going. So I have no doubt.
I think the big upside too for your industry is that you have been missed so desperately by every single person. So I think once it is safe, the enthusiasm should hopefully flood the gates.
Well, the problem we have, we've heard that line as well. And you're right, Sean, that, it's going to come roaring back. Unfortunately, there's only so much supply that we have, right? Like a banquet hall that has one banquet hall on a Saturday night was busy pre-pandemic. It can only host one event on that Saturday night, right? So it comes back to being busy, but they're still busy. So it's not like, well, they can do 2 events in their one hall, right? Jared, with your musicians, right? You can only do 1 event per night. Well, you could have 3 requests, but you can only do 1. So it's not like you can build back the money as quickly, but because of really high demand. So that's why it's still going to be a long process for the wedding and event industry and the musicians, because we can only do so much. Restaurants were packed before the pandemic. Having packed restaurants now just returns them to where they were. Doesn't make them more packed. Doesn't make them, more profitable. They can only put so many people in that restaurant. So it's going to take us a little while, but we'll get there. But that's our problems that people won't understand in our industry, that we only have so much to offer. Restaurants can't double in size to pay back what they spent in the last year to stay alive. So just go back, support them, get out there, have a beer, go to happy hour, go to the weddings, tip well. I cannot say that enough. Tip everybody, tip a little bit more. If you were lucky to keep a job, spend a little bit more on local business than you would have, and tip everybody more than you would in a regular time period. So yeah,
sure.
Do it.
Sure. Actually, Brian, how can somebody get in touch with you?
So I'm available all the time at my email at brian@qualityentertainment.ca. Our website, where you can see in-person and virtual entertainment, is www.qualityentertainment.ca.
Well,
and of course, we're on Facebook, Instagram. We've got them all. So we're everywhere you need us to be.
Thank you, Brian. So at this time, I'd like to thank our guest, Brian Henry from Quality Entertainment, on the Pivoted Success podcast, hosted by Sean Cochran from TCC Canada, and myself, Jared Goldsmith from ESAC's Virtual Events. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.